Flood Protection Secrets, the podcast to the protection against heavy rain and flooding by Dr. Flood, Andreas KLIPPE.
So the big challenge is, how can house owners like you and me get a flood-free home? How can business managers like you and me get a flood-free company? And how can public servants provide flood-free critical infrastructure and livable cities?
Flood Protection Secrets, the podcast by Dr. Flood, Andreas KLIPPE. This podcast is for foresighted and proactive people who do not want to shovel the muddy water out of their room while standing in the midst of the disaster.
Therefore, those who design and plan, the architects and engineers, need to construct such buildings and cities, and that even when the entire environment is completely flooded. That is a challenge, and this podcast will give the answers.
Flood Protection Secrets, the podcast by Dr. Flood, Andreas KLIPPE.
Is there a difference between flood-proofing a so-called simple private home and a huge site consisting of multiple buildings, landscape and outdoor areas? Hello and welcome to another episode of Flood Protection Secrets. I have created a short mini-series of 3 episodes titled Saving Costs with Smart Flood Protection Planning, and this is episode 1. Its subtitle is Prevent Costly Mistakes with Early Flood Protection Advice. I'll explain why you should consider one important step before buying flood protection barriers. Finally, I'll share my 3 best pieces of advice with you. They will give you and the people who are in your building, in your rooms, more security. And advice will help you save a lot of money. Let us start with the main question. What is the important step? What is this important step, this hidden step? What makes a demountable flood barrier a safe flood barrier? And why is certification so valuable to a homeowner, business manager or public official? Let us start first to describe you. Of course, I do not know you, but you most probably belong to one of these groups when it comes to flood protection of your building or your area. Group number 1 is the homeowner. Group number 2, a business manager. Can be the owner or the manager. Group number 3, the public servant or governmental representative. And group number 4, an architect or a civil engineer, like me as an engineer. Today I talk about the 2 first groups, the homeowner and the business managers. Imagine you are a private homeowner. So you live in your private house with your family and your children perhaps, and protecting one entrance does not require much effort. Example, entrance door of a private house, or you want to protect the garage of your 2 cars, a few entrances only. And you have a little bit challenges, but the effort is not that huge. However, a technical inspection or an engineering assessment may be required to examine the entire property, especially when complicated situations arise, such as difficult fences to neighboring properties, slopes, complicated public sewers, and heavy hidden cables. If you were not a homeowner, you might be a business owner or business manager who is responsible for the company premises. Imagine you are such a business manager and you are responsible for a factory, a hotel, a car shop, or a supermarket. As an example, can be any kind of business. The situation seems to be the same. The building, the furnishings, and the people are to be protected, right? But there are differences compared to the private house. It is a more complex area, and the business operations should not be hindered. Why should operate the flood barriers around the clock, even at night or early in the morning at 4 a.m. on a Saturday? And before I answer this question, I would like to tell you what happens in reality in everyday life. I want to share my experience of How building owners purchase flood barriers. That is what happens all the time. We often receive requests from a homeowner or from a purchasing department. Please send us an offer with your best price. And what shall I do? What is the right technology? What is the scope of the construction work? What accessories are available for the flood barriers, such as wind and weather protection, protection against vandalism or theft? What about the storage systems for mobile flood barriers, such as demountable flood barriers or Inero mobile flood barrier? So should there be a ground beam or anchor plate? Should it be made of stainless steel or mild steel? It is almost impossible to offer all these options. This offer would be too extensive, and who wants to decide based on this information? A purchasing department usually understands neither the technical background nor the need to incorporate a company's business habits into flood protection. They are in favor of something cheap. But is it cheap if you spend your hard-earned money on such flood barriers and then when the heavy rain comes, the flood barriers can't be installed properly and they don't work because they were cheap? Why were they cheap? There is a reason for that. The material may not be of the right quality. The aluminum and steel are not high quality. As a user, how will you notice the difference? Or is the thickness of the flood barrier too thin? Or is the metal sheet of the barrier too thin? Or is the rigidity not high enough? Where do you see the differences? Have you seen a hydrostatic test of these barriers with your own eyes? When we did that, the flood barriers were filled up to 1.5 meters or 2.1 meters with water, and then a 40-kilogram block of wood was repeatedly knocked against them, like the Incredible Hulk is doing. You may ask yourself, what is this, and what is what is it? Yes, what is this, and what is it good for? You might expect these barriers to work when floating debris hits them. There's a lot of floating debris. Have you ever seen the videos on TV of flooded region? There's always something floating in the water. The water is not clean. It's a muddy, dirty, and disgusting dark river of water, mud, garbage, and floating things. Today's title is Cut Costs with Smart Flood Protection Planning. Here comes my first 3 advice. Advice number 1, only use tested flood barriers. Please. We use RS demountable flood barriers and Anham automatic flip-up flood barriers, both of which have been tested by the world's largest insurance company, FM Global. FM Global is based in Boston, USA, and has its Asian headquarters in Singapore. They apply the strictest criteria to the products. This applies to all products for the construction of a building. The building must be earthquake-proof, must not burn easily, and must be flood-proof. This includes the electrical system, the windows and doors, the electrical cables used, the sprinkler system, what else? The roofs, the material used for the building and its interior, in interior fittings. Surely you don't want your building to collapse after an earthquake, do you? And in such a case, you will certainly trust those constructions that include tested procedures and criteria for your building. Or would you buy something that is cheap but not safe? Would you expose your investment and your family, your employees, your visitors to danger, to risk? Advice number 2. You should visit the flood protection supplier's production facility. Go to their premises, look behind the scenes, check whether they have trustworthy employees, touch the materials, get an idea of how they work. Then you can gain the confidence you need to protect your family, your employees, your visitors, and your investment. And in our case, I invite you to visit our various headquarters around the world. In Europe, it's in Germany. Visit the RS Stepanek KG in Limburg, 40 minutes north of Frankfurt am Main. For the British and Irish Isles, Flood Control International in the UK, in Tavistock, in the southwest of England. Or in New York, for the Americas, Flood Control International. In Melbourne, Flood Control International, Australia. And In Clark, Philippines, you will find Flood Control Asia RS Corporation. It's 80 kilometers north of Manila with its own international airport in Clark. Qatar Airways, Emirates, and Cathay Pacific fly there daily. Advice number 3 is the hidden step I mentioned at the beginning. This is usually forgotten. Why is it so? Why is it that? Is it forgotten because it is so difficult? Not at all. Is it quite simple? It is quite simple, huh? Very simple. I'm finally going to tell you the hidden step you shouldn't forget before you start your flood protection project. Start with good planning. It sounds simple, doesn't it? But rest assured, most people who ask us for help don't even think about it. They want to spend their money immediately. Oh, great. I say to that, that's wasted money. Don't spend your hard-earned money for nothing without having a plan. It could end up costing you more than you expected. Don't buy something without a plan. I will tell you what such plan look like and what the difference is between smaller buildings and larger systems in the next episode of Saving Costs with Intelligent Flood Protection Planning in part number 2. If you have liked this episode, subscribe to the podcast Flood Protection Secrets. If you haven't already, and if you're really worried about heavy rain or flooding and what it means for your home, building, property, then you can contact the flood experts by clicking on the contact link. Wherever you are in the world, we can connect you with the right people who can help. Or contact me directly. My name is Andreas KLIPPE, German engineer, entrepreneur, and book author. The links can be found below this podcast description. And do not miss the next episode in a couple of days. And as always, stay safe and flood free.
I wish and hope for you that you make the right decisions when it comes to your personal flood protection. And if you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to this podcast channel if you haven't already. Now it only remains for me to wish you a good day. Do something with it. Maybe until the next podcast episode. I would be very happy. See you then. As always, stay safe and flood free. Your Andreas KLIPPE and the whole Flood Experts team.
That's it again with the new episode of Flood Protection Secrets, the podcast by Dr. Flood, Andreas KLIPPE, German engineer, book author, and head of the Flood Experts. What can Dr. Flood, Andreas KLIPPE protect for you? Anytime? Worldwide? Contact us or just click through to www.floodexperts.de/bonus. Detailed engineering. German quality. Safe. Flood protection secrets. The secrets you'll want to unfold.
Don't forget, you're only one flood barrier away.
Subscribe to the season, and you'll never be late for an episode.